Welcome back, Adventures and LARPing fans. Have you ever had that one person, that one player, that stayed in character no matter what and would not come out of character? Well, I've been traveling here, and I think I have them beat. Meet my new friend here, Bill. He's very much into character. He's not actually a guard. He just hopped over the lines and set up shop here, and so far nobody has noticed. And I've got a special topic for us to start off with today.
Oh no.
I'm here with Vex, as well as Joe Giddings from Colony Drop Cosplay. And so to preface this, we're currently obviously not in our main studio because we're here with Fanboy TV doing the 8-bit salute, helping out the Operation Supply Drop in our troops. So we're using one of the side studios to get a little bit of film time in. Earlier today, there was a discussion, not my first discussion on this particular topic, about brainstorming to play live action Pac-Man. So, I want to brainstorm here, and I want to pick you guys' brains on how exactly this could work. Live action Pac-Man. I'm thinking you have to have big foam suits for Pac-Man and the ghosts.
Well, okay, I hate referencing somebody else, but someone else actually did this video.
I've seen some folks that have done some stuff where they're running around a city.
No, they actually did. They put up a studio.
And I've seen a commercial where there were some people that essentially had T-shirts of ghosts on running around a spot. But I'm thinking, how would we, these three creative minds, lovers of LARP and Pac-Man, well, I don't know that we're really lovers of Pac-Man, but nonetheless.
Maybe Miss Pac-Man, but...
that's a whole nother topic. All right.
So would there be a maze?
Well, see, that's the question. Would there be a maze? So, as I mentioned, I've seen some footage where folks have played around a city block, and I think that may be a little bit much because at some point somebody's going to call the cops. Let's be honest. And then you're going to stand there in a giant Pac-Man suit and explain to the cops that you have to get away from the ghosts. And somebody's taking a ride downtown.
And then there was the magic sunshine.
Now, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and somebody mentioned, well, if you had some sort of a maze, you could put balloons to pop.
Okay.
And I thought that sounded kind of neat. That sounded maybe a little messy, hard to set up.
Would you, if the actual players are like running, I think the game would not take very long, and it doesn't seem to fit well with the Pac-Man game, as those little Pac-Man and ghosts were very slow moving. So there must be a way to like slow everybody down or
a maze
something.
of treadmills.
A maze of treadmills.
Well, there's an idea.
That could be a whole nother game.
Or
well, you'd slow them down. You'd
build little
for the ghost
electric carts that you have to drive around, which would make it fun in and of itself. Now you're being chased by ghosts and you're in this little Mario Kart, but slow, like geriatric Mario Kart.
You mean like the electric grocery carts at like HEB or something like that?
Yes, but little.
All right. But at that point, would you then construct them to look like giant Pac-Man and ghosts? I'm thinking no matter what, you're having to have giant Pac-Man and ghosts here somewhere.
Absolutely.
All right, Carts. What? So,
Instead of popping balloons, what if you had to shove them into your mouth?
see, that was my first thought, is that there would be something as Pac-Man that you're having to pull in, and somebody else pointed out that it would start getting heavy. I said, that's okay, because I can see somebody running down the way in a giant Pac-Man suit with balls flying out left and right as he starts to get full, and I want to play that game. Maybe even as Pac-Man.
It's almost like hungry hippos.
I'd be worried whenever they start
Yet
getting
another
the banana.
thing that we...
What is it? The banana, the cherry, the pie. I think they have there, and the key.
We're at a time that we have the technology to EL wire the ghosts, pop in an Arduino, and you get to a power pellet and hit the button. It sends out the signal and switches their color. Oh, yeah.
See,
All right, we need corporate backing to make this happen.
We are looking for a sponsor as we speak.
Right. On carts with ghosts changing colors and shoving balls into the big Pac-Man mouth.
back to the first part of this was maze.
Yeah,
And how big? Big enough
I
for a
kind of
cart,
like.
but
Well, yeah, I kind of like the idea of a maze because it keeps it contained to a specific spot. And if you do that, then it becomes a spectator sport. You can have stands up around, and then you get corporate Pac-Man, where you've got the great big Pac-Man and some sticker across the back.
So it would be a maze on the ground, but you would still be able to see everything around you.
Well, you could see the walls of the maze. The stands are up above, and the camera and the blimp going by would be watching need Goodyear Pac-Man.
Now the other question is, do you want the player view when you're playing as Pac-Man?
I think, like in NASCAR, you should be able to switch views from the spectator side. Now, as a player, I think you should only get one view as to what's going on in front of you. You don't know where the ghosts are. Maybe some signal as they get close, like a proximity alarm. You're getting close to a ghost. You don't know which direction it's coming from.
Oh man, I'm freaking out.
Yeah, don't play this game while on certain medications.
Or do play this game while under medication.
That could be a whole other thing. All right, so we've got somewhere to go with this. We've got some promise. We're looking for some sponsors, and I think we're on to something.
Oh, I could find a place to put this maze.
All right, we've got a destination and everything. So stay tuned to further episodes of Adventures in LARPing, where we slowly but surely over time make this a reality.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I'm out LARPing in the field, fighting all day long, my weapons will break down. Sometimes I get injuries, and that's when I call on Crazy Carl's duct tape. It's weatherproof, it holds up to the stresses and strains of a day in LARP. I can fix my weapons and my elbows and knees and get back out on the field as fast as possible. Crazy Carl's duct tape for all your repair needs.
Welcome back to Adventures in LARPing. And we're talking once again with Lorelei Hutchings of Colony Drop Cosplay about costuming. You do a little bit of it. I've heard. So, when last time we talked, one thing that you mentioned was patterning pieces off of a patterning dummy. Tell me a little bit more about that. I understand that it's just a homemade thing that you created, yes?
Yeah.
How do you make one?
You can make a dress form dummy. You got to get a friend. That's the important part. You got to have a friend because you're going to have to get real close and personal.
I might not be able to make this.
Well, you can get your better half to help.
All right, I've got friends. Good.
You'll need to put on a big T-shirt that covers you down past your crotch.
Okay.
And then what you'll do is very carefully wrap your body in duct tape. Duct tape will create a rigid form around your body. If you're a girl, I suggest going across and then around and then over the bust. This was a problem I fought on many dress forms, was trying to get an accurate bust size, which is really important if you're draping things or building things like corsets or tight-fitting gowns.
Sure.
To make sure that all of your curves in every direction are preserved properly. So once you're wrapped up in duct tape completely and you want to get a good thick layer on there, you turn around and you have your friend cut the shirt right up the back.
Okay.
All the way up through the t-shirt, through the duct tape, all the way up, and you can slide it off like a coat.
Okay.
I put a coat hanger inside of it, and then I tape all the holes closed, tape the back closed, tape the sides, the neck, and the shoulders closed.
Okay.
With the hanger inside, or some people build a stand. And then you can fill it with either crumpled up newspaper or expanding foam. The one we have for armoring for me is filled with expanding foam, so that it's rigid and that he could press the armor pieces against it. But my sewing one is just fabric, fabric scraps and newspaper, so I can stick pins into it. And then you just close up the bottom after it's full, and you have a little dummy. You can put it on a table. I have a piece of leather I hang from the ceiling, and mine hangs from the ceiling, which is a little wobbly, but it works.
Hey, so long as you can pin things to it.
Yeah.
That is an amazing idea right there. I think I've seen a few pieces talking about that online, and I know that my wife and I created one off of her from some of your instructions, and it's incredibly useful for making costuming. And we were talking some about patterns, and you were talking about creating your own and things like that. But suppose somebody wanted to start with a particular outfit that they've either found around Halloween or something to that effect, and they wanted to alter it and make it more LARP usable and less costumey. I know that even before your cosplay, Colony Drop Cosplay was doing stuff, that you also had a shop, Shinsei Originals, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, it's
where you did a
shinseioriginals.com.
whole lot of recycled clothing where you altered pieces to turn into other things. What kind of tips do you have about altering things like that?
The first thing to look for when you're looking for something to alter is you probably want it to be too big.
Okay.
It's really important because no matter what you do, once you start cutting it apart, it's going to become smaller when you put it back together because of seam allowance. As long as it's bigger and you think that you have a good idea, it can totally work. I always suggest when you're going to start cutting things up to always split things up the side seam and through the armpit.
Okay.
Because that's in production sewing, that's usually the last seam that's closed. And once it's out like that and the side seams are closed, we call it working in the flat.
Okay.
Because the garment is flat now, it's no longer round, it's a little easier to alter things. And especially if you just need to cut it in, which I do a lot to make it more, more shape to your body.
Sure.
Once those sides are cut, it's much easier to do that. If you want to remove the sleeves, go ahead and cut the sleeves out and then go from there. Because if the garment's too big, usually that means the shoulder length is too long.
Okay.
As well, so the shoulder seam will be way down here, so that gives you a chance to cut the shoulder seam back up, ensure your armhole back up to fitting your body, because if the garment's too big, it's probably going to be too big for your arm.
I see.
And you can really, once it's cut apart, once you have it back into its base pieces of front, back, and sleeves, if this is a top or whatever, you could really do anything with it from there, as long as you remember how it goes back together, and that you make sure that all of the biggest problem is making the armholes too big, and then the sleeves will no longer fit back on again if you're trying to put the sleeves back on.
Okay.
So you got to watch how big you make your armholes and how big your original sleeve is, just by walking your pattern, holding the two pieces of fabric together, and just going along the seam as if your fingers are the stitches to make sure that it all matches around. And since you only have to do it once, you just got to make both sides of it match. It makes it pretty simple.
Sure.
But then you can, add in other fabrics, applique, or even take that garment that you've cut apart and use that as a pattern. Just add in your seam allowance when you're cutting it out of your new fabric. You can just lay that down and just go.
Neat.
You could, a lot of times.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, those Halloween costumes are made out of that really cheap nylon that's
Okay.
gross. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
feel good on your skin. It doesn't breathe. But the costume cut is cool, or it flatters you, or you really like it. You can just cut it apart and do it that way. Or if you don't want to cut it apart, we do a thing in the industry called punching out, in which you use a Wattenberg wheel, which is it's a long instrument with a circle on the end with spikes. You
Okay.
might see it in a doctor's office.
Not sure I want to see a spiked wheel in my doctor's office. It's time to find another doctor.
At the doctors, they roll it across your skin lightly to test your nerve endings to see whether you can feel
Okay.
it.
So we're talking little.
Like little needles almost on
Okay.
the end of it. And you can lay the garment out on a piece of brown paper.
This is scary.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then use the Wattenberg wheel to trace the seams of the garment, and then the Wattenberg wheel will punch through into the paper and leave you these perfect connect the dots outline of that piece of fabric. And then again, you just use your ruler and add in your seam allowance all the way in, and you know, copy it that way, and any other notes you need to make on your pattern. But now you've got a beautiful paper pattern, and you didn't even have to cut it apart even, because I've done that with some of my favorite shirts that I bought. I'm like, I love this shirt, I'm gonna make 5.
I see. I see. Well, that's a really neat tip there. When you decide that you want to alter something and you're looking at some various costuming or your various garments that you might want to do, what are some of the you mentioned that you want something that's bigger because it might trim down, but what are some other things to look for? Are there certain materials to look for, or certain methods of construction, or what kinds of things would you look for or suggest?
Well, you want to look out for things that are lined, like especially coats that are lined. It becomes difficult to put the lining back in afterwards.
Okay.
And a lot of jackets,
That makes
once you
sense.
take the lining out, they kind of go weird. So you want to look at how it's lined, especially if it's a lined garment. I buy a lot of random pieces at the thrift store for LARPing in general, vests especially. Seriously, look in the women's section for vests, because there's some crazy, awesome LARP vests in the women's section.
You know, the last time I was in the thrift store looking in the women's section, I was getting some looks.
It's the thrift store, it's fine.
It's just for LARPing people. Don't mind the pantyhose. No. I'm sorry, you were saying?
Also, like, long skirts are really, like, for female LARPers, like, come on, we all know the long flowy skirt is just like part of the repertoire. You can get
Right.
a lot of big skirts at the thrift store for almost nothing. I pretty much buy any like broomstick long skirt I can find at the thrift store just to have in my closet for LARP usage.
Okay.
You
okay.
never have too many skirts. But yeah, I mean, if you're gonna alter it, you wanna look for something that's not gonna come apart when you like sew it back together.
Okay.
Things that are like satin, especially like special occasion outfits. You're like, I could totally turn this into a noble dress. But once you start pulling those things apart, they just start shredding.
Okay.
Anything with a loose weave, it's gonna just start shredding when you take it apart. So you either have to work very quickly or serge it as you go along to keep it from fraying. But yeah, I mean, don't ever feel stuck in your gender either when it comes to looking for costume pieces. It's really okay to go look at the other gender's clothing, because you'll find something that'll be unique and different, because what we wear in LARP is so unlike what we wear in regular everyday clothes. I mean,
Right.
my husband would never wear a kilt except at LARP, but he wears it happily at LARP, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
I do joke about going looking in the women's section for stuff, but even some I've mentioned before that I'm really a fan of Warhammer clothing and stuff, and the German of the time period, and even a lot of that. The top half would be shirt-like, and the bottom half would be a skirt. I mean, they had skirts, so looking in this for some sort of skirt. Now, once I start testing it, trying it on and stuff, I might get a look or two. But really, it's no different than the looks I get out of the park anyway. So,
clothing garments do not have a gender. They are inanimate objects. It doesn't matter where the store puts them. A garment is a garment is a garment is a garment. It's not a human being. It doesn't have a gender. If you want to wear a dress, it's your dress. It's not a lady's dress. It's your dress.
Nice.
I wear guys' clothes all the time. You know what I mean? Like, garments don't have a gender, and you should never feel stuck in what they're telling you have to wear because of your gender, especially for costuming. Like, get wild. It's why we costume, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I can't wear this stuff in real life, but I really want to wear it, so I got into costuming.
Nice.
So, like, yeah, just don't be afraid to get creative. Don't be afraid of the dressing room. It's okay.
But try it out in the dressing room. In the middle of the store, they might have something to say about that. Well, thank you once again for coming on and hanging out with us. You are definitely welcome here anytime that you want to talk about all kinds of LARP stuff going on. I'm Chris Glover and Lorelei Hutchings of Colony Drop Cosplay. And again, any questions that you might have for myself, for Lorelei, for the show, suggestions and things like that, we want to hear from you. Please email us at adventuresinlarping@gmail.com. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Crazy Carl's Combat Academy, brought to you by Adventures in LARPing.
Adventures LARP fans, and welcome back. We're here on another crafting corner to show you a really cool trick. We're going to be doing some fun stuff with hot glue today. Now, before we begin, the important thing about hot glue is knowing that it's hot. We have a hot glue gun warming up here. It gets hot enough to melt the glue. It also gets hot enough to burn yourself. Be very, very careful before you start using this sort of thing. Now, what we're going to do is create our own gemstones, mass production, dirt cheap, with hot glue and silicone molds. Now, to show you what we're talking about, I've got a couple of molds here. These little pink ones here are actually created specifically for this project, but really any mold that's a silicone mold, the kind of flimsy rubbery ones, will work. So I've got an ice cube mold here that's a bunch of leaves, same effect. I've even got a cooking mat, a little heat pad that's got a bit of a honeycomb texture to it, that if we wanted, we could do the exact same thing in this. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to fill it with hot glue, and when the hot glue is cooled, we pull it out and have a stone. It's as easy as that.
Aren't we also going to stick an LED in it? Or is that a later one?
We are going to do that. So here's what I'm going to give you this.
Yes, sir.
It looks like we've got some glue dripping from the hot glue. So pick one of these. Get everything prepared first and ready. You got one that you're going to do. Fill that sucker up. Now the key is, if there are any little fine details and such in there, be sure and get those filled in first, and then just make a whole big old blob. Now, while she's doing that, I've got a little strand here. This is a strand of craft wire, little wire strand with LEDs wired into it. It's just a little craft thing that I found in the floral department. And we're going to do some extra special effects here. Once you get that all stuffed in there, all right, got it nice and full. Right in the middle, I'm going to stuff this LED and sit there and hold it while it cools. Hey, or you could hold it while it cools.
I'm the assistant for a reason.
Now, once you have some of these, and in a few minutes, when it's all nice and cool, we will pull it out, and it will look pretty. But we got to wait and let it cool. The key here is let it cool completely before you pull it out. What happens if you pull it too fast and the glue isn't completely set? You peel the glue all off of your LED or toss it aside and start over. Not a big problem. So, some other things that you can do with this. When you pull it out, you can paint the object that comes out. We're using some gemstone looks today. We'll get to that in just a sec, but we've also got some of these with little flowers and other designs. You could paint all sorts of things. We've stuck an LED in this one, but you could also do things like add some glitter into it, or spray down the mold with some sort of a paint and then put the glue in, because the paint's not going to stick to the mold. It's silicone.
Thing to know is that silicone won't stick to anything except silicone. So
Yes.
you really have a lot of leeway as to what you want to do with this. My first thought was powdered pigment
Oh, yeah, that'd be
that
pretty.
art supply stores use for whatever you want to put it in, and you could just add the powder to the mold before you put the hot glue in, and then once the hot glue is pulled, when it's cool and pulled out, the pigment will be around the outside, around the surface where you'd want it. So this is
Now,
quite a thing.
Oh, yeah.
what do you do with this thing once you've created it and it's just sitting there and it's a glob of hot glue in the shape that you want, maybe colored all pretty? Well, the nice thing is it's hot glue. So if you want to attach it to something, you can hot glue it to something.
Oh, yeah.
At the same time, if you've got something that you want it already lined up and stuff, like some foam that we'll show you here in just a minute, while it's still hot, you can press the foam down on it and it's already going to be glued to the thing that you want it glued to begin with. I would hesitate to use it for something stressful like a button, but if you did it with a button pressed into it from the back and the button is taking the stress, then you could do the same sort of thing there. You could attach it to as embellishment to decor for costuming, for armor, for a variety of decorations. Say you've got a big chest of gold and gems, then, well, getting a whole bunch of those gems from, even getting a bunch of craft store gems is really expensive. This takes just a little bit of time, easy enough to do while you're sitting in front of your favorite LARP TV show, watching TV and learning about things like this. Now, we should be just about, the way we can tell, it kind of discolors, and we can start pulling it away a little bit.
There we go.
There we go. We have a little bit of a stone. We've got a little bit of a hot glue stringer there. We just pull off. No big deal. Even with stuff like our big honeycomb here, if we wanted and we got too big a piece, we can just cut it because it's glue. Once we have the stone in here on our little light, we now have a lit up stone.
I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it looks pretty.
There's
It's
light.
nice and glowing.
There's not light.
There we go.
And we've actually gone through and done an example of this. So this is a crown, just kind of made, kind of a colored for like an ice demon or something of that nature. It's just foam.
Looks like the Ice King.
There you go. It's just foam because we wanted to cut out something simple. It's a couple of layers of foam. So one layer has the gems glued to it, and the other layer is just kind of backing to hide some of the wiring. We could punch a couple of holes in back and put it on somebody's head. Yay! Now Courtney is going to eat us all in her icy evilness. But when we went through with this, you can see that all of the stones, they are all painted, colored. They don't look like hot glue. Now, it did take a few layers of paint to really get it to stick because I was using craft paints. If you do something that's more aimed at sticking to plastic, like a quick spray paint of plastic paint spray, it's going to hold a lot better, at least as a base or a platform to do other paints on top of. But one of the big reasons I went over with just the craft paints and a couple of thin layers is partly to get the look that I wanted, but also, let's see if we can see, these also have lights built into them, and we're going to walk up to a camera.
Okay. Camera 2.
You can see, lights.
I was going to have somebody just cut the lights.
And so
Oh.
we can actually get some special effects going there, and it glows through the craft paint that we've used because we've used a bunch of thin layers. Real easy to do, a whole pile of things that you can do with it and ways that you can improve on it. I'd love to hear about some. But at the moment, we're going to show you some more of our show. So stay tuned for some more adventures in LARPing.
Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Dave Mesa. I am one of the managers of a park called the Devil's Bayou, where we host the biggest Dagger Here event in Texas history called Forging Pangea.
Sure.
Dagger Here is a full contact medieval combat sport played with boffer weapons. We go out in the field and beat the tar out of each other and then party all night. It's great fun. Everybody should try it at least once.
Hi, my name is Sarah Lynn Bowman, and I want to invite you to Living Games 2016 in Austin, Texas. The conference will take place between May 19th through May 22nd. It is a LARP conference that celebrates all forms of LARP, from the academic to the practitioners. And we invite people from all levels of understanding of LARP, from expert to novice. So if you're interested in LARP, if you're interested in the educational aspects or the academic aspects, or maybe you just want to learn about crafting, feel free to join us. Again, that's Living Games Conference, May 19th through 22nd in Austin, Texas.